Hi guys, welcome back to my 5-part series, Intro to Competitive Pokemon Gaming. This is part 2, Understanding the Metagame. Last week I covered part 1, which covered the rules for the 2014 VGC season. Showed you guys what you can bring, what you can't bring, some sticky situations, some scenarios, and who wins in certain, peculiar instances. If you came back from that video, thanks so much. If you're tuning in for the first time, thanks as well. That's really cool. I really appreciate it. Right before I begin, if you don't know who I am, my name's Alex, and if you want to see, a little introduction, I have an introduction video on my channel. I'll link it in the description. It tells you, just a little bit about myself and my history with the game. And so, why don't we just get started? So, as far as the series list goes, we're on part 2. Next week, I'll do part 3, building your team. And so I'm in the middle of finals right now. That's why it's taken about a week for each one. And I want to make sure they're solid pieces. But I appreciate you guys waiting. I have a link to part 1 if you haven't seen it right there. So if you want to check that out, that's cool too. Let's keep going. So the metagame. In order to win, you need to know what you'll be up against. That seems pretty straightforward. At least half the battle, though, is choosing which Pokemon to bring. And I know some people, that doesn't really make sense to them. They think, it's how you're going to play the team. That's important too. But you got to set yourself up into a position to win. You got to make sure that you have a win scenario. And that starts with your team. That starts with knowing what you're going to be up against and bringing the right things. So this series, or this part 2, is going to help you become familiar with what's really going on in VGC 2014 right now, so we can build a successful team next week. And I want you guys to remember going into this that Pokemon is a game of prediction. 90% of this game is out predicting your opponent, and if you keep that in mind, it's going to help a lot. So what to expect in here? I have a top 45 Pokemon list. These are all used by players in the 1700 range on Pokemon Showdown. That's a pretty solid score rating. So this is the stuff that the strongest players are using in order. I have some comments on typings and typing cores, some good switching cores that you'll see in a lot of teams, so you can look for, and we can have that knowledge going into next week in building our team. Some common strategies you're going to see, so you're not caught off guard, and some common plays, which are it's kind of like a smaller version of common strategy. It's kind of like more particular to this metagame. You'll see when we get there. Alright, cool. So I'm going to cover first the top 45 used Pokemon on Pokemon Showdown by players in the 1700 range. This list is going to give you a pretty good idea of what you're going to encounter and how frequently you're going to encounter it on opponents' teams. If you look at these top, 5, 6, look, Garchomp's used on almost half of teams, so is Rotom Wash. And almost, Talonflame's up there at 40%. That's incredible. Like, those are some high numbers. Going into this that we're going to be seeing those. We're going to have to beat them. We might even want to use them ourselves because they're clearly really strong in this format. You got Tyranitar there at 32. Mawile, first fairy on the list. He got a huge buff this season. Kangaskhan as a Mega is fantastic. Meowstic's kind of your prankster abuser. You got Scizor as your Steel type right now. He used to be a lot more popular. It's kind of gone downhill. We don't have a lot of good Steel types in this format. Mawile's probably the best one, as you can see up there. But Steel is what you're using to counter Fairy most of the time right now, because Poison's still not very good, even though they buffed it a little bit. So you're going to look at that. We have Chandelure here. He's our Trick Room setter. Then, as you go down, like even 11, 10%, we're going to go down to like 2% usage down at the end of this list. So just take a second, look it over. Most of this is just so you can pause if you need to see something, come back. I'll go to the next page. You got Politoed for Rain. Amoonguss was really popular, will almost always be popular because of Spore. Klefki's another prankster abuser, a little bit weaker than Meowstic because of his weakness to some of those top players. But Venusaur's there for Sun. Aromatisse, another Trick Room setter. Kingdra there for Rain. Charizard, that's not going to be Charizard X, guys. Keep in mind that's probably Charizard Y, that number is, because of Drought. Drought's really strong. So is Sun right now. And I'll cover that a little bit later, but that's because they have access to Fire, which, in my opinion, is the strongest typing in the game right now. And and they also have access to Solar Beam, one-turn Solar Beam, so you have Grass to cover your water weakness. Then you got you got a Fairy. Gardevoir is pretty popular actually right now. I haven't seen as much Breloom. Goodra, Rhyperior, Scrafty. Fighting types have gone down a lot because of the Fairy and stuff like that, so you don't see a ton of fighting types. I think he's your first fighting type we see on this list, actually. You got all the Rotom, most of the Rotom Cut, Rotom Heat, Rotom Wash are all really strong options. And then down here, down to like 2% used. This is still, don't forget, this is I think this was out of 131 games were, compiled, and they got some stats out of that. And so even stuff that's used 2% of the time by these top players, that's still stuff that you're going to want to know what it's doing and how you're going to counter it, or have some kind of idea of what, at least that you can handle it. So just keep that in mind. I just want to make sure we got that out on the books. All these guys down here, you won't see every battle, but you'll see them once in a while. It's better to know what they do. So I wanted to cover those top 5 Pokemon. I wanted to cover them a little bit more in depth to show you how you would go about understanding what these Pokemon do. Like, I want you guys to learn how to know what to look for when you're trying to scout for teams, and we'll talk about that too. So I'm gonna talk about the top 5 on that list. I'm gonna give you a little bit of the pros, the cons, some stuff you can expect, and once you understand like this process that I'm doing here, you can do this for the rest of them, so you know what's going on. As you play the game, this will just become, immediately it'll get ingrained into your memory, so you don't have to actively like write it all out or whatever. But I want to make sure you know what you're looking for. So Garchomp, he is the most used guy right now on PS. He's on almost half teams. You'll often see Rocky Helmet there. That'll be combined with sand or Rough Skin. So every time you hit it, because the whole metagame shifted to being physical. The whole metagame shifted. It was almost entirely special. Now it's largely physical. Rough Skin gets you that extra damage. Same with Rocky Helmet, especially for, you see on the helps against Parental Bond Kangaskhan, when it hits you twice, Kangaskhan takes about as much damage as you're dealing out. It's crazy stuff like that. Talonflame takes damage. Garchomp's there. He really beats a lot of those top other guys, except Rotom Wash. Rotom Wash probably has the favorable matchup, but not by a ton. You can also see Lum to avoid Will-O-Wisping, which got buffed to 85 accuracy, and that's really used a lot now to stop all the physical attackers. And Yachi Berry, those are the 3 most common items you'll see on Garchomp. Some moves you can pretty much always expect. Dragon Claw, that's usually his dragon move of choice. You don't really want to outrage in doubles. It's too risky. You don't know what you're going to hit. You really need to make sure you're playing the right move every turn, so outraging can really get you in a bad situation. Earthquake to take care of those steel types, or the Steel Fairy like Mawile. Rock Slide for Talonflame, stuff like that. Substitutes very often there too to stop Will-O-Wisp. And on all of these Pokemon, you can always expect to see Protect. Like, always think that there's a possibility the Pokemon knows Protect, because Protect is the greatest move in VGC. So it's so strong, and it's all about, the game's about prediction. When you can throw off your opponent by protecting something, protecting and switching, that's what's going to win you games. So I didn't write down Protect on all 5 of these guys I have here because I thought that would be repetitive, but keep that in mind. Protect. So some pros. Garchomp's wicked fast at 169 speed. It's a very cool speed tier because he outspeeds most of the metagame and nothing really speed ties him except himself. He's got some pretty good defenses. Can't be paralyzed because he's ground type, and his moves got wide coverage. He is 4 times weak to ice though. Hidden Power got nerfed. Less HP ice is flying, so there's not as much HP ice out there, so he's relatively safer to that. So that's good. Yeah, you have to worry about earthquaking your own teammates. He doesn't have like a different ground move he's really going to use. He's also weak to Intimidate, which, like I said, that and Will-O-Wisp, it's on every team almost because there's so many physical attackers. He can really help against Tyranitar, Talonflame, Parental Bond Kangaskhan. Those are all in the top 8. All those Pokemon are in the top 8 right there. Usage list, so he's pretty strong. He also helps against himself because he super affects himself. You want to make sure you run max speed on him though, because everyone's running max speed. You don't want to be outsped by another Garchomp. Helps against statuses because of his access. He's fast enough to use Substitute pretty well, and he can't be paralyzed, which is most prankster users. That's the status that they have is Thunder Wave or Swagger. But who's going to Swagger your physical Garchomp unless they're desperate? And against dragons because he outspeeds almost every single dragon in the current metagame. He might be the fastest dragon actually because Latios and Latias aren't in there. So he's pretty strong. Next, we go into Rotom Wash. He was second, I think, at 47%. You'll see a lot of either Chesto with Rest on him, Citrus Berry. Sometimes people run Choice Scarf, actually. That'll catch you off guard. You can expect him. Hydro Pump's going to be his water move of choice. You'll see a lot of Thunderbolt. Sometimes Rest. I like Rest. Will-O-Wisp for sure, because everything's got physical right now. Sometimes Thunder Wave for a different status. Volt Switch if he's Scarfed. His pros, his really only weakness is to Grass. Now that Mold Breaker Excadrill's out, you're not going to get Earthquake with Rotom, So usually the only thing you really got to worry about is your Grass weakness. He's got some pretty good defenses. He can't be paralyzed thanks to the new mechanic in 6th gen. Water and Electric give you some pretty decent coverage. And he's got the Will-O-Wisp option. Cons, he's not really the strongest offensively, so you're going to be 3-shotting a lot of things. And in a game as fast as VGC can be, 2-shotting is, 2 or 1-shotting is really where you want to be at. So sometimes he's really underwhelming. And his speed's kind of meh, so you're going to be outsped by a lot of times because you're also not investing a lot in speed unless you're running that Choice Scarf option. He helps against a lot of physical attackers because he can Will-O-Wisp them. He completely walls Talonflame, beats Gyarados, and he helps against Rain unless they have Ludicolo. But if you get around Ludicolo, Rotom Wash is a great option for against that. Talonflame. I don't know why this one's moving and the other sprites aren't, but I thought it was cool, so I left it. You'll see a lot of Life Orb or Choice Band on him. Sometimes Citrus Berry. Actually, I should have put Citrus Berry in there because he's going to be doing a lot of damage to himself. Some common moves are Brave Bird, Flare Blitz. Those are his 2 most common. He has Gale Wings, so he has the strongest priority in the game, being Brave Bird as a priority move. That's bananas. He also gets Tailwind as priority and Roost, as well as Acrobatics for people who don't want to hurt themselves. But if you're running Acrobatics, you don't want an item. He won't be running an item because it'll nerf the power of Acrobatics too much. And he's really fast, so he uses U-turn pretty well. He can come in, scout, switch out to something else, maybe an Intimidator. Like I said, for pros, he's got the strongest priority in the game. He comes out, pretty much takes out whatever he wants to take out if it doesn't resist. As you can see, the top 2 or 3 guys on that list. I mean, Garchomp and Rotom are both up there because they both can resist Talonflame. Talonflame's there to kill stuff, and they both have a pretty good chance against it. So that's why that helps push their usage up. He can't be burned even though he's physical because he's fire type. He's wicked fast, so fast. And he's got speed control option and Tailwind. So he can. There's not a lot of speed control in VGC 2014. Speed control is really important, especially because stuff that's attacking first is usually the stuff that's winning. In 2013, you had a lot of Icy Wind, Cresselia, stuff like that. They got rid of, so far all those move tutors are gone and stuff, so we lost a lot of speed control options. So Talonflame's priority Tailwind is pretty popular in that it's going to boost your team's speed, times 2 for 3 turns. So that's pretty strong. Some cons, he's pretty frail. He's going to go down to a Thunderbolt for Rotom Wash for sure, or Rock Slide because of 4 times weak to Rock. And he hurts himself. That's not the best. You're going to end up killing yourself. So, Glass Cannon, He helps against Trick Room because he's still got the priority option. He'll still be attacking first. Venusaur, which is on a lot of Sun teams, when he gets Chlorophyll, you're going to outdo him with your Gale Wings, Brave Bird, and one shot, unless they have like an Intimidator 2 on you. And anything with moderate to low health, Talonflame can come out and kill it before it gets a chance to attack. So he's really strong. 4th, Tyranitar. Notice all 4 of those guys outside of Talonflame can take a Talonflame Brave Bird. Just before I go on, just think about that. They all help beat Talonflame. Some common items. He's got Choice Scarf on him. At least back in the day, that used to be really common. The Mega obviously can't run Choice Scarf, so the Mega will be slower. Mega Stone's popular sometimes. So is Chapel Berry because of his 4 times weakness to fighting. However, there hasn't been a lot of fighting around here. I've seen some weakness policy on Tyranitar, which doubles your attack and special attack, or it raises it 2 stages so it doesn't double or whatever, something like that. If you get hit by a super effective move, so I've seen that. Sometimes you really see Crunch, Rock Slide, Low Kick, or Superpower. I'm not sure if Low Kick and Superpower are legal right now. I think one of them is, maybe both. Sometimes people will run Special T-Tar too. They'll run Flamethrower, Dark Pulse, and Ice Beam on it to catch people off guard and to avoid the nerf of getting burned or intimidated. So we'll also watch out for that. Some pros, he induces Weather, Sandstorm. He's got some massive attack. Just coming out and sending out the Sandstorm gives him a special defense boost. One other thing I wanted to include is that when he Megas, he puts up a Sandstorm again, which is fantastic against Mega Charizard. Because Mega Charizard can come out. If you lead against each other, your Sand's up. If he tries to Mega, you can Mega too, and then you can wipe out that Sun again. So he's really good. He's most commonly used as a weather counter because of his ability to stop, their effects. He's the slowest guy who, besides I think Hippowdon, but no one uses Hippowdon, to cause weather. So he's really strong that way. He can be slow or fast according to your item. Choice Scarf actually makes him pretty decently fast with max speed, and he's got pretty good coverage. He is 4 times weak to fighting, which has been on it's low usage right now. Fighting isn't really that used, so that's not too bad. He is weak to rain, even though you're trying to use it to counter rain. You're still weak to water, and he's weak to solar beam on fire teams. He's got a lot of weaknesses, so you got to play around that. But he does get that special defense boost when he comes out. So he helps against Trick Room. Man, does he help against Trick Room. Trick Room has a hard time pulling him out unless they have like Focus Blast. They want to use Focus. We call it Focus Miss because it's got like 70 accuracy. Weather dependent teams, except for other Sandstorm teams, because you can't stop Sandstorm teams because they all run Garchomp, and Garchomp beats Tyranitar. But he does help against rain and sun and stuff because he can get rid of their weather. Helps against Talonflame. Helps beat Meowstic. Crushes Meowstic. Helps against fire types too, which I think fire is the best type in the game. I think I mentioned that, so that's important. And I'll do one more. I'll do Mawile. Really, you're only going to see Mawile with that Mega Stone because he gets huge power. He comes in with Intimidate, goes to huge power. It's nuts. They buffed this guy like crazy. He was never seen before. You got some common moves in Play Rough, Sucker Punch, Iron Head, Swords Dance. If he gets Swords Dance up, he's going to chunk the living hell out of you. He does so much damage. Play Rough gives him that new Fairy typing. It does super effective against a lot of really important types in the game right now. Sucker Punch gives him a priority option, so even though he's really slow, you're still gonna hit stuff. You can still hit them before they attack you, and probably one-shot them, believe it or not. And Iron Head hits other fairies. He's got a great typing. His pros and his con is that he's slow. If you're in a Trick Room team, that's awesome. If you're not Trick Room, you're going to be going last without minus Sucker Punch. He has access to a strong priority move in Sucker Punch as another pro. Great coverage on his moves. He's got great typing. And he's got access to Intimidate and huge power. Intimidate's awesome. It lowers their attack one stage when he comes out on the field, at least before you've Mega'd. That's great in a physical metagame like this. Huge power doubles your attack, and he does massive damage. Some cons are that he's just asking to get Will-O-Wisp. He can't really hit Rotom before Rotom hits him with a Will-O-Wisp, since Sucker Punch won't hit them while they're Will-O-Wisping. So he's really just asking to get Will-O-Wisp. Garchomp, Talonflame, and Rotom Wash, the top 3 Pokemon in the game, kind of do work against him too. So Garchomp and him will go at it because he can play rough Garchomp, but Garchomp can Earthquake him. So stuff like that. It'll go back and forth. I know he can Sucker Punch Talonflame. He can hold his own. They'll have to duke it out. But those 3 top Pokemon do threaten him in some way. So that is a con. He helps against Trick Room, helps against Dragons because he's got that new Fairy typing. And he just does crazy major damage. He's just so strong. So, guys, I put these 5 in here so that when you're going... I couldn't do all 45, obviously, because this video would take a half hour, 3 hours if I did that. But this way you know what to expect. This is the kind of stuff you want to look out for when you're watching teams. You're going to go on Showdown. You're going to watch some teams. You're going to see what's popular. And this is the kind of stuff you want to note, what he's used for. And it'll become second nature to you. But, this is what's got to go through your mind every time you see him. Every time I see a new team... I look at all their guys, and I go through, all this goes through my head. I'm like, okay, this could do this, this could do this, and then you'll start seeing combos and stuff like that. So this is the kind of information you want to do on the popular Pokemon. Just put it in your head, lock it away, pull it up when you see it. I wanted to talk about typings. This is actually really important, so really pay attention. And I think this is probably the most valuable part of this presentation, probably, at least for more experienced players. Typings build cores on your team. So you want to build a core on your team so you can switch. You can get out of bad situations and you can put yourself into good situations. I said Pokemon was a game of prediction. Switching and protects win games. Those are probably the most important part of the whole game. I would even, I'm a firm believer that protect is the most important move in the game. And switching and protects get you into positions to win and get you into positions to outpredict your opponent. And that's what you have to do. You need to remember when you're playing VGC that at any given time, you have to be putting offensive pressure onto your opponent. You have two Pokemon for a reason. You can use them both. If one needs to switch, make sure your other one's doing something for you. Don't leave one out there just protecting while the other one's trying to work. You can't 2-on-1. It's not, it very rarely works. So switching is important to keep your Pokemon safe while staying in the game, and you might need them later. And so that's where these cores come in. You build a team around like a solid core, and you're able to get yourself out of bad situations because you have stuff that's prepared to switch in for it. So typings are there so you can always have a way out to save your Pokemon, and provide offensive pressure. I do want to say that to back up what I'm saying, the number of Pokemon remaining is so important that it literally has its own win condition. If your game goes to time, which it sometimes will, it will go to time. You won't max out you'll max out the time on the DS or in the battle, and it'll go to time. The number of Pokemon remaining is the first tiebreaker. That's how important keeping your Pokemon alive is, and that's why a core is so important because you're able to switch out. You don't want to, if something's going to die to a Heat Wave, you don't want to switch out. You don't want all your back Pokemon to be weak to Heat Wave too. So you need to have something that's going to come in and take that attack. So some solid typing cores right here. I included some. Literally, if you are looking to make a team, like we will be next week, so keep these in mind for next week. But if you're looking to make a team right now, and none of these look good to you, just go onto the type chart, look for stuff that has, some resistances, and then try to find other types that cover its weaknesses and then its third weaknesses. A 3-type core is one of the strongest types of cores. 2-type obviously can't cover everything. It usually takes a couple things neutrally. It doesn't have perfect switches for everything. But 3-type cores are usually really, really strong and stuff you should keep in mind. So Water, Fire, Grass is a pretty famous core. Like let's say someone's got an Ice type, it's threatening your Grass type. You can easily switch in Fire and, take the hit and then dish back out. You put pressure just being out there because you're going to KO back. If someone's got, I don't know. I mean, Water, Fire, Grass takes a lot of things neutrally, but that's okay. There's always secondary typings. And, Electric for Water, but you can switch in Grass and you resist the Electric. Stuff like that. You can see, Fire's weak to ground, but you switch in Grass and that resists. Stuff like that. That's a good core. Electric, Bug, Water is also a pretty solid core. If you look at it, they cover each other pretty well. Psychic, Dark, Steel was one of my favorite. Steel got a little nerfed due to the Gen 6 changes where it doesn't resist Ghost and Dark anymore. But Psychic, Dark, Steel is also a pretty good solid core. Some dual cores, which aren't as strong and they won't save your entire team, but they're good to have within themselves. Dragon Steel or Dragon Fire, those two are pretty good. Poison Bug is pretty good, and Ghost and Dark are pretty good. Fairy did weaken that last core, but just if you're curious, go onto a type chart, look at these typings next to each other, and see what I'm talking about. They will provide you cores, and that's what you want to build your team around, a solid switching core, because you need to get yourself in and out of bad situations. And that'll get you a higher % win, ratio. And in tournaments, it's all, we're in Swiss. You need to win as many games as possible. So you want to be as consistent as possible and have a good switching algorithm. I wanted to cover some. Let me see. Yeah, some common strategies. Sorry, I forgot to put one of these above. So I'm going to cover Trick Room, Weather, Good Stuffs, Swagger, Safeguard, and Disquake. So we're going to start with Trick Room. Trick Room. This is mostly for people who are really new to the game. So if you are new to the game, listen. Feel free. If you're not, hopefully you can still get something out of this. So Trick Room reverses the speed order and allows your opponent or you to sweep with slow, strong Pokemon that got to save their EVs for bulk instead of speed. So a lot of times, if you're not in Trick Room, you have to invest speed because going first is a very vital point, part of winning a game because you can KO Pokemon before they get to attack you back. That's like getting extra turns of attacking. In Trick Room, they switch the turn order, so all the slowest guys go first. And those slowest Pokemon don't need to invest their EVs in speed because they know that they want to be slow. So they can use those EVs for bulk, and that makes them much, much, much stronger. So it's something to think about, something to watch out for. If you see any of these Pokemon below, Aromatisse, Slowking, Chandelure, Reuniclus, and Gorgeist, those are like the most common Trick Roomers. They'll be alongside some slow Pokemon. If you see that on a team, you can pretty much, you be pretty sure it's Trick Room. Some of those slow mons I mentioned: Rhyperior, Abomasnow, Amoonguss, Talonflame, Mawile, Azumarill, Ferrothorn, Aegislash, Tyranitar, Scrafty. Talonflame, you might think like, hey, that's fast. He has Gale Wings, so a lot of Trick Room teams are using it because he's got priority flying moves. So he's bananas. He's really strong. So stuff like that, that's all a strong sign of Trick Room. All right, Trick Room's covered. Let's go on to weather. Weather gives a team an advantage through the condition of the field. It either brings up, obviously, sun, sandstorm, rain, or hail. The main abusers in this generation right now are Charizard Y, who gets paired with Venusaur all the time, and Tyranitar, who gets paired with Garchomp a lot. Sun and sand are the two most uh, apparent weathers in the game. I know last generation there was a lot of rain. Um, However, rain's seen a little bit. There's not as many people out with rain because Charizard Y does have drought, and Sun really nerfs water, uh, and vice versa. But a lot of times it's not being as played as much as you can see by the usage statistics. Oh my god, I can't speak English. Abomasnow will do a lot of hail. You'll see him either on Trick Room team with a Focus Sash or with a Choice Scarf. That'll catch people off guard. And Politoed, you'll see him for rain, and he'll usually be along Kingdra, Ludicolo, or Rock and Perish Song, along with like Gothitelle Shadow Tag, or Mega Gengar Shadow Tag, to win off of Perish Song. Stopping weather, you can there's two main strategies to stop a weather team. You have counter weather, which is like you use your own weather inducer to disrupt your opponent. Tyranitar is widely used as the most common counter weatherer because he comes out with Sandstorm. He gets the special defense boost by having the sand up, and he's got good strength and utility otherwise, so he's used really commonly for that. Or you can choose to stall it out, which is new to Gen 6. After 5 turns it goes away just like Trick Room does. Smart protects and switches, that core I was talking about, that really helps here. Those will help stall it out, or you can bring Pokemon with key resistances to typings, or to weathers, and I listed some here, some options against rain, sandstorm, sun, and hail. All that stuff. If you're worried about any of those, that kind of stuff's really going to do it for you. A lot of people don't bring, like dedicated counter hail. You don't almost never see hail, and usually you don't see like full sandstorm teams either. It's usually like Tyranitar plus Garchomp, and that's usually because they want to stop. They're trying to counter weather themselves, and Garchomp's the strong mon. But stuff like that, if you're having trouble, I have a short list right there. Just give you some ideas, some brainstorming. All right, weather's done. Talk about good stuffs. Good stuffs is the term given to teams that aren't based around a particular strategy, but are comprised of 6 strong Pokemon that are interchangeable with one another to handle any situation. These types of teams are definitely the most flexible, and they tend to win the most. And it's because they have so many different options you can play. Because we get to see 6 of our opponent's Pokemon and pick 4 to bring, Good Stuffs utilizes that. So you're like, okay, I can see what they have, and now I have 4 good Pokemon to use against this guy. Most teams do look like this, and the battle is largely decided on team preview and anticipating your opponent's choices and mons. You want to make sure, you want to see what they have, what you have that can take out most of that, and then what their counters are and what you can counter their counters with. It's that kind of mind game thing. I do have an example here to show you guys. This is a random battle I found. It's not me. I found these 2 people playing, took a picture. This is what the start looks like. You can see 6, you pick 4. If you look at what's going on here, the guy on the bottom, his Venusaur, gets checked by Talonflame, Gardevoir, and Excavalier. However, Excavalier really isn't doing anything to D-Road's team. It really can't touch almost anything except Tyranitar. So he's probably going to leave Excavalier. And so is Talonflame not really doing very much because of Intimidate from Gyarados. Obviously, huge power Aqua Jet from Azumarill, Rock Slide from Garchomp, Rotom Heat. So you can kind of tell that Scissor's going to have to bring his Gardevoir in order to beat that Venusaur because his other 2 options really aren't doing anything for him here. And Gardevoir also can help against that Garchomp and Tyranitar a little bit. Other than that, he's got, he's got Rotom Wash over there. He's going to bring that because it's going to help against the Gyarados and Azumarill, and also Rotom Heat, and somewhat, Garchomp, Tyranitar. So you're definitely going to see Rotom Wash over there. And then he's going to bring, Tyranitar and Garchomp because they're going to help against, Rock Slide, Garchomp against Garchomp, Garchomp against Tyranitar, that kind of stuff. So when you see at the start of a battle between Good Stuffs, you really just try to pick out, like, hey, this is what I'm going to need to bring in order to counter that. D-Road obviously realizes that he's got a lot of leeway here because Tyranitar and Garchomp, after they're gone, like the rest of the team, if he's not bringing Talonflame and Excadrill or an Excavalier, his Rotom Heat covers that, but honestly, his own Garchomp's going to take out the rest of his team if he can get rid of that Rotom Wash. So what happens? He brings Rotom Heat, Gyarados against Rotom Wash, Garchomp. You can see the 4 Pokemon they each chose here, and that's used. D-Road started with Intimidate because he knew that the other guy's team was almost all physical attackers. He should have known Rotom Wash was starting, though. I think he made a misplay here. He should have brought something to take care of that Rotom Wash a little bit better. I would have done that right off the bat. And he knew Garchomp was going to start because, Scizor really doesn't have very many options against Venusaur. At least Garchomp can somewhat, try to one-on-one it. It was either that or Gardevoir, so Gyarados was good to get that Intimidate up. He starts with Rotom Heat Gyarados, quickly switches to Garchomp to take that electric attack, and he protects with Gyarados as Tyranitar comes in to get rid of that Intimidate. And now D-Road's already at a major advantage because Garchomp still threatens Tyranitar. That means he's going to have to switch again. He can go after Rotom Wash, and Gyarados can switch out like he does. He goes after Rotom Wash, switches to Rotom Heat, and Rotom Heat takes negligible damage from that Thunderbolt. Gardevoir is forced to come in because he doesn't have anything else to take this incoming Earthquake. And so it pretty much ends up cleaning up to being Rotom Heat and Tyranitar versus Gardevoir. I know D-Road didn't bring his Venusaur. I would have, but he still won anyway. So he did what he had to do to win. And Scizor kind of just his lead really fell him apart. He was behind from the very start, and that's because he really led with not the greatest of options, and he didn't bring anything there to really chunk out that Garchomp, except for that Gardevoir, and that's why that Gardevoir's still alive, but it wasn't enough to take out the rest of the team. So that's what you can kind of expect from like a Good Stuff's team. It's a lot of thinking, and you gotta anticipate what they're gonna bring, and the battle really will be determined very early on, unless you have a really strong switching core, which I wouldn't say Scizor did. He doesn't have anything here to take that Dragon move except that Gardevoir, and even then, Tyranitar, Garchomp together are really strong. They're a really strong option. D-Road was a little weak to that Rotom Wash. That Rotom Wash could have done a lot more damage here, and it did. I mean, it helped take out the 2 Pokemon that he did take out, but it wasn't enough. So, stuff like that, that's what you want to look out for. Swagger Safeguard, that's another archetype. You'll see someone throw up a Safeguard and then Swagger their own teammate for a +2 boost to their physical mon. Or your own, they'll Swagger your special attackers just for a 50% chance that you won't be able to attack. Sometimes they'll even Swagger your physical attackers, just hoping they hit themselves for massive damage. Also, sometimes these Swaggerers run Thunder Wave for a combination called Parafusion. And if you're both Swaggered and paralyzed, you have a 62.5% chance of not attacking for the turn. So it's strong in that regard. That's something you really want to look out for. Really, the 2 biggest users of that in this metagame are Meowstic and Klefki. I included some other options they might have on them. Meowstic almost always runs Quick Guard, actually. And so they both know Prankster, so they get to get off their attacks at +1 priority. So you might want to watch out for those. If you see those 2, that's usually what they're going to do, some kind of Swagger paralysis or, some kind of screen, light screen, reflect kind of thing. And we have Discquake. Discquake is a very common strategy. It used to be very, very popular. It's still strong, though. That's where you have a Levitator with Discharge and a Ground type with Earthquake. This way you can Earthquake and Discharge without hitting your own teammates, and you do full damage to the other side of the field, because if you hit everything on the field at the same time, it does full damage instead of being, 75% if you're just hitting like the other 2. Like Muddy Water, it only hits your opponents, that's only 75% strength, versus if it, Surf hits everything for the full 90 power, whatever it is. Some common ground types you'll see that participate in Discquake are Garchomp, Diggersby, and Rhyperior in this metagame. Like I said, it's not super common, but just be on the lookout for it, especially if they're paired with, sometimes Rotom does it, not as often. Zapdos does it sometimes. Zapdos Garchomp was like the original Discquake pair. Manectric will do it sometimes, so will Jolteon. This does full damage, like I said, to both your mons without taking any damage themselves. Discharge gives you, each of your Pokemon a 30% chance of paralysis. And it covers most typings. Electric, Ground does, except Grass. However, Grass isn't very popular in the first place, so they're not really worried about that. And also Ground and Dragon are decent checks against that too because they only take it neutrally. But it's still really strong. Like you're looking at a lot of damage coming at your face all at the same time. So be on the lookout for any combo of those two on a team, and if they lead together, it's probably going to be a Disquake. Here's the Commons playlist. I wanted to put this out there because this is stuff that when I see together, it's like, well, okay, obviously this is what's going to happen, or like this is the potential. Venusaur, Chlorophyll Venusaur doubles its speed in the sun, usually paired with Charizard Y. Occasionally Ninetales, more often Mega Charizard Y. Sandvale Garchomp with Tyranitar for the hacks, the increased evasion. Swift Swim Kingdra or Ludicolo with Politoed for, double speed. Any physical attacker with Meowstic who will safeguard and then swagger their own physical attacker for double damage. Very often that's a Kangaskhan, sometimes Bisharp, sometimes, physical Venusaur, Garchomp, Talonflame, all those guys paired with Meowstic. Watch out for that safeguard and then swaggering their own guy to just boost his attack because they won't get confused. Pokemon with Defiant ability to stop Intimidate leads. So if you have like a Gyarados, you want to be careful. Or anything else, Mawile has Intimidate too. If they have like a Bisharp with Defiant, they're going to get a boost from that Intimidate. So you don't want to just go ahead and lead with it. You kind of want to mind games them. Sometimes you want to lead with it, sometimes you don't. Just all about prediction. Are they going to lead with it or not? Trick Room set up, paired with Fake Out, Rage Powder, or Follow Me, so the attack, the Trick Room goes up. That way, you keep your Trick Roomer safe. Since Trick Room does have the lowest priority in the game, your Pokemon will be going last, and so those moves help keep your Trick Roomer alive. So watch out for any of those. Smurgle, a lot of times we'll run Fake Out and Spore on him, so watch out for Smurgle because they're probably going to try to put you to sleep. Weakness Policy Dragonite. Dragonite has multi-scale, which makes the first damage he takes is half. A lot of people try to just straight up super affect him with something. He can take half from that. Activate his weakness policy, up his attack and defense by attack and special attack by 2 stages right off the bat. I see a lot of people doing that, and then you're staring at a really scary sweeper right from turn 1, and you haven't really done any damage to it due to its multi-scale. Shadow Tag Gothitelle to keep your stuff trapped while you Perish Song, and then they switch out on the last turn and you faint. So if you ever see like a Politoed with a Gothitelle, or something that knows Perish Song, Lapras with a Gothitelle, be wary of the Shadow Tag, Perish Song duo. Prankster Lipard with Fake Out and Encore, so if you try to protect from the Fake Out, he'll just Encore you into Protect. Contrary Malamar, who uses Superpower, so every time he uses Superpower, he actually gets +1 attack, +1 defense, instead of the -1s. And also Shell Smash, Cloyster, Barbarackle, and Crustle. Anything, you don't want to let that thing get 2 speed, 2 attack, 2 special attack, and then White Herb off the defense lost. So be wary of all that stuff. So as a general overview, the metagame, it's vast and ever-changing. What I recommend is to go to Pokemon Showdown and watch matches between different people. Keep in mind what I said about the top 45 Pokemon, about what you want to know about their common items, movesets, the pros and cons. Watch what they have on their teams, watch what they bring, and what each Pokemon's function is. Like I said, it includes moveset and item choice. Surprise tactics can go a long way, which just goes to show how important it is to understand what you're up against. So knowing what you're going to be, knowing what you're going to be fighting, it's really important since it is a game of prediction. If you don't know what to predict, they're going to catch you off guard, and trick strategies like that will work at first until people catch on to it. So if you want to run, I don't know, something that's not normal, go ahead, try it for a while, see if you can catch people off guard. That's cool too. Just make sure you're paying attention to what other people are using so you can expect it and you have a counter to it and you know how to answer it. And so that's part 2. It's complete. Thanks for watching again. Next time we're going to start building our team. This includes knowing what to expect from your opponent. That's because, like I said, Pokemon is a game of prediction. Now that we have an idea of what we're up against, we can build a strong team foundation to start winning matches. And we'll talk about forming a solid team strategy, building a strong core, and the techs that will hold the team together. So, guys, thanks for watching. I'm sorry if I sound a little hoarse. This is the second time I've made a half-hour video back-to-back, so I've been talking for an hour straight. I appreciate if you watched it all. I know it's long. If you skipped around, that's cool too. I hope you got something out of it, and have a happy Wednesday.